Okay, so this is an unbelievably good episode if you are an influencer or a brand and you are engaging in influencer marketing. So we have Kameron on this episode, who is an attorney as well as a content creator. So this is really good because you have two benefits here. You have what it looks like from the legal standpoint when you're working with influencers, and you also have what it looks like from the content side. So we go into all the details about what influencers need to look at when they are negotiating deals with brands, vice versa. There's a huge amount of tips and takeaways from this, and there's a ton of info in there that's gonna make your marketing so much better. I can't wait to see you in there. So Kameron, so nice to have you here, and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to spill the legal tea today.
Nice. I loved all your branding and everything. Obviously going through setting up this interview and everything, going through your content. You know, you've got some great content and an interesting background because you're also an attorney. So let's dive into sort of how you ended up here. Like those influencer marketing and attorneys, never saw.
Such an interesting combination, of course. So quick backstory, I'm a talker. So I told Jack beforehand, just give me a signal if I'm talking too much. But I've always been a creative at heart. Honestly, I love everything about content creation process. When I was younger, I wanted to go on Broadway. So I've been in plays and performing arts and all of those things. I took a graphic design class. And then I got to college, and my amazing mother, who I love so much, who now has an open mind, told me, well, what are you going to do for a career? And that's when I kind of fell into the legal journey, as I like to put it on my platforms. I took some mock trial classes. My advisor happened to be a lawyer, and it grew from there. But during that time, I also was on YouTube, and I just love to create video content. And I was started off doing like beauty and hair, but in law school, y'all, here's a little tea on that. I'm not trying to be cute in law school. I was trying to learn and educate. So I just picked up my camera and started vlogging my law school experience and realizing, hey, there's something here. There's this gap between the two worlds. And I realized I was able to kind of fill that.
Nice. Super interesting, actually, that you kind of pivoted your content. I think too many people start off with like the popular niches.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they always go for human niche or beauty products and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, niching down into something that you're actually doing or passionate about is usually a better way to go. So were you upset when you sort of moved away from beauty and hair and all that sort of stuff and had to go more into like legal and like the less interesting topic, I suppose?
Yeah, so not really. At first, I was thinking I had to completely just get rid of one area and only focus on one. But then I realized that was the benefit of what I was doing, is showing how relatable I can be. Like, I'm right here with y'all talking about fashion, talking about beauty, and all of the things that we love on our regular basis on social media. But I also now can help you creators. Like, let's talk about the contract stuff. It may not be fun, but I try to make it a little bit fun by saying I'm spilling the legal tea and make it interesting, because it's so important. And you think you don't need to know the information until you need to know the information. So I try to make sure that I'm still having fun with it, and I still talk about topics that I do love. I do love beauty and fashion, but also let me show you that it's really important to understand the contracts and kind of like the boring stuff about influencer marketing.
Got it. And so when did you, just for timeline's sake, when did you graduate? When did you start your YouTube channel? And then when did you really start being an influencer marketing attorney? Kind of when did that sort of take off?
Absolutely. So I was one of the old people on YouTube, as I like to say. I started on YouTube in 2014, just randomly uploading. I had no strategy. I wasn't making any money. I just was on the platform because I was already watching so much content. I'm like, let me just put up my camera and try to do something with it. And then I went to law school in 2016. So that's when I started doing like law school related content. I was just sharing behind the scenes of what it looks like to be on the pathway to be a lawyer, and what are the benefits and kind of the pros and cons with that, and also still running a social media platform. Graduated in 2019. I passed the bar exam the first time. Thank you, Jesus. And then I started working in employment litigation. So I worked at a law firm in Birmingham. That's where I'm located. And I loved it. I really loved it. But I felt like this tug on my heart to really help creators. So September 2020, in the middle of a pandemonium, I decided to leave the practice of in employment litigation and then now help my creators full time.
Wow, that's amazing. And like, you know, you have so many people, you've got like 80,000 followers or something, which is insane for this niche. And, you know, obviously you're giving a lot of great content away. Is that sort of like how you attract all your clients and all that sort of stuff? You do it through content pretty much?
Exactly. So at first, when I first quit, I felt like I had to really amp up my marketing. But then it hit me like what I was already doing is my marketing by me showing how many brands I work with, not to brag, but to show like credibility, really, especially with lawyers in other areas that really still don't understand the influencer marketing space. I wanted to show like not only am I a lawyer and I'm understanding of the influence marketing industry and I'm an expert in that field, but also like I'm a creator. Like I'm just like y'all. I have my camera out. I'm vlogging in the middle of the street as well. So that combination, I think, already markets for me, which really, honestly, is a blessing. I love it.
Nice. And what sort of, I suppose, influencers do you find seeks the most legal help? Because I know it ranges depending on, you know, what you're doing and what sort of products you're working with and that sort of stuff. But what's kind of like the most common scenario of people who come to you?
You know what? It's TikTokers. And I think because it's such a new platform and it's just it's growing so fast. And I think people that originally got on TikTok were just like, oh, it's just gonna be this fun thing. Like no one's gonna actually be trying to do brand deals and make money as quickly as it did. So then now so many TikTok people, that may be the first platform they were on. Maybe they didn't ever get on YouTube or ever get on Instagram. And they're like, wait, I have this brand that I love to work with reaching out to me. What do I do with these contracts? So I've been getting a lot of TikTok creators, but honestly, across the board in a variety of different like areas as far as like fashion and lifestyle and gaming, I've pretty much seen it all, even some talent management companies.
Okay. And so if you're like, is there more sort of legal requirements for TikTok versus like an Instagram, for example? Is it kind of like, is there more risk on TikTok for brands or influencers versus Instagram or something?
That is a great question. I think where the issue comes with TikTok is there's so much copyrighted music. So that's where it gets a little bit tough over there because as most of us know, like trending songs is how you grow on TikTok. But when you're working with a brand, you can't use those trendy songs. So what's the way around that so that you can still kind of grow in the algorithm and get to know TikTok and make sure you're on the explore page and stuff like that? But you can't use that music. So what's the way around that? What are songs that you can use? So that's probably, I'd say, one of the number one concerns I've seen on TikTok.
Got it. Okay. And so obviously not using copyright music for brand deals, like organic deals, it's fine, isn't it? Like organic posts and that sort of thing. Okay. Great.
As long as you're not promoting something. So if you're technically the line is, and although I have to give a disclaimer, although I am an attorney, I'm not y'all attorney. Okay. You got to seek local counsel in your local jurisdiction and your, you know, wherever you're located. But I do want to touch on this because copyright music is kind of across all the platforms, right? So really where the difference is one, whoever owns that copyright material, if they don't say anything, it's like, you're kind of good, but why take that risk? Why take that risk to use that? And also if you're profiting off of their music, profiting off of someone else's copyright, that's when you get into the legal issues, which is why sponsored posts, a lot of brands are there in their little guide or whatever they provide for you when you're doing the contract with them. They say, these are the only songs you can use, or you can't use this music. It's because they're going to get sued by the copyright owner.
Got it. Okay. So it's also to protect the brands, not just the influencer.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. And then what does a contract agreement kind of look like between, say, a TikToker and a brand? Is this just a document? Is there software that people use? If I'm a TikToker, what's the best way to stay in the green?
Oh, okay. So it kind of goes for all the platforms. So first things first, a lot of contracts vary because it's so new to think that we're just now using contracts within the past. I'd say like 3 years or so, brands are just now really saying, hey, we need a contract, or influencers are like, hey, I really need a contract for this. So it's still so new. Honestly, every contract I have reviewed for myself and my clients, they all are different. So different. Of course, they include some of the general things that you have to have, like what is everyone's name? Where are they located? What are the deliverables you have to present? When is the content due? How many reshoots? What is the governing law and all of those things? But specifically, like I really think the difference with TikTok is that music element and also the time frame, right? So it comes to, if you're shooting on YouTube, you have the option of a longer form content. But with TikTok, you really want to stay within that 15 seconds and 30 seconds ideally. Yes, they have the minute, but you know, you really on the platform. Yeah, if you really want to grow, people want that quick, funny, interesting, organic content on TikTok. So how do you incorporate that in the brand? So it definitely varies, but I think over time we're going to get to more of a standard, which I'm excited for because brands don't know. We don't know. It's so new. Even I hosted a CLE for lawyers and they're still, you know, we're all still trying to catch up and play it as we go.
Got it. Is there any horror stories that you've heard of or seen with an influencer and a brand just not working out? And what do you think the issue was, and why was it such a horror story?
Oh, horror story. Okay, I'm gonna do a somewhat horror, but then it turns into successful, and then we'll do.
No, it's perfect. We always like
So
happy endings.
this was pretty recent with one of my clients, and he got an email and he was like, Kameron, I don't want to agree to 5 years usage. They want to use my content for 5 years, and that's not the amount they're not willing to pay the amount that I'm requesting for that. What do I do? They responded, it was their policy. And there's nothing worse as a creator if you're not familiar with how to navigate that kind of communication when a brand hits you with, that's just our policy, so take it or leave it. And then adding the element of it's a dream brand you love to work with. It's the point where, do I take the risk and check them and say, well, I'm not doing that? Or do you ask for the policy? So that's what I told him to do. And even me as a consultant and as an attorney, sometimes it's hard. I don't want my clients to lose the opportunity, but I do want them to stand up for themselves. So I told him, I said, maybe a risk, but respond, ask them for the policy. They took a couple days. My client was nervous, but they came back and they're like, our apologies, we had misinformation. So just imagine if he didn't have anyone to go to, my client wasn't able to talk to me, he would have just either lost out on the deal, and we're talking almost 5 figures, and or he would have just walked away. So without asking the right questions. So sometimes it's really helpful to get someone else in there. As far as like a horror story, okay, this is a pro tip just for y'all. If you're reading a contract and in the clause under the governing law section, just control F and find governing law, and it's out of the country that you live in, don't sign it. Try to negotiate into your country, because if you hire an attorney in your country, 9.9 times out of 10, there's not much overlap in other countries. I say this because if they don't pay you, there's not really much legal recourse you can do. So if you're waiting for, let's just say, using fake numbers, let's say you're waiting for a $10,000 deal, you've already completed all your deliverables, your content is doing great, your audience loves it, the brand loves it, and then net 30 comes around and they just decide not to pay you.
There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do. So.
Got it. Okay. And so what is, yeah, that actually leads on to a good next question. So in terms of when it's an influencer working with a brand, what's the best sort of payment structure in these contracts? Obviously the later the payment, the better for the brand, but what's best for the creator? Right.
So I think how I like to separate payments is when the brand initially reaches out to the creator, they're just talking about the content, right? They're just talking about, we want you to post on TikTok. We want you to post on Instagram, and maybe they can repost. So that's generally it. So when you think about like how emails are set up, it's pretty quick. Like if you print it out, it may be like 2 or 3 pages long, but then when you get the contract, it's like 20 pages long. So clearly there's something else within the contract that I'm agreeing to that we never discussed in the email. So I always like to lay that out for my clients. Like just think about it like that and really dig deep into that contract. So even when I give the initial rate, like say I send my rate sheet, I'm like, okay, we're agreeing about this amount. I always say it's contingent on what the contract says, or it is going to depend on what the contract says, and that will be my final rate. So when you separate it like that, it won't kind of lock you into a certain price before you even get to see the contract. So that's what I try to tell creators. That to me is like a really pro tip when it comes to the influencer space as a creator. Because it's awkward to say, okay, I know I said this price, but I saw the contract and this is actually the price. So to avoid that like awkward nature, I always just tell them ahead of time, this is my price right now, but I'm leaving some wiggle room just in case the contract says otherwise.
Yeah, and I'm sure, that helps with scope creep as well. When, you think you're agreeing to, this content, and then, all of a sudden there's like 20 revisions and all these other things that like you didn't account for when you originally priced it.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then in terms of payment structure. Sorry. No, you get.
I was gonna say, and definitely make sure you're being honest about what you're spending up front, because a lot of brands are willing to give you 50% up front if you're investing in a photographer or equipment or whatever the case may be for the shoot. Just be honest with them and tell them, hey, I know we agreed on X amount net 30 days after the content is posted. However, would I be able to get a stipend of that amount before I do the content? And a lot of times they're willing to negotiate.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, so get some up front and then some on delivery pretty much.
Right.
And And yeah, the other question that I see a lot is, at what point should you start using contracts? Like, there's obviously a difference between micro influencers, medium and large influencers, and the price range goes from, free product all the way up to, millions of dollars.
Exactly.
So at what point should you start thinking about, putting in a contract? Because, it is a lot of work for the creator as well.
For sure.
Going through that process and everything.
Definitely. I always say err on the side of contract. So if you're obligated to do something, as soon as a brand is saying, we're sending you this product, even if it's free, but they're requiring you to post or requiring you to act and do something, there should be some type of an agreement. It doesn't have to be the full out long 20-page contract, just so that you, as well as the brand, understands what's going on. So as soon as it could be something as simple as both of people's names. And it just says, as soon as creator receives the product, they will post one Instagram in feed within 15 days. The payment will be delivered within 30 days. It will be paid on this platform. We sign it. Sometimes it could be as simple as that, especially when we're talking about just product. But what happens is, even just kind of helping the brands really quick, is that small brands or small businesses, they may reach out to creators and send them free product thinking that they're going to post, and then they don't. So if there's no contract requiring them to do so, as a creator, you don't have to. And I tell brands that. I say, I love to be on your PR. I love to get this product, but because I'm receiving this as a gift, I have no obligation to promote or share. And it's okay to be that honest. And then if they want that, we can talk about what that looks like so everyone understands.
Yeah. And I suppose the other thing is, also when people give product for reviews and that sort of thing, it doesn't have to be positive.
Right.
So, I'm sure there's benefit in having that contract in place as well when people are giving free product, because,
Absolutely.
Protecting the brand side, if you're to send free product and then, for some reason they send a bad review, you probably have to have some sort of contract in place to deal with that issue as well.
Exactly.
So I think it goes both ways, really, doesn't it?
I agree completely. It's definitely important because, of course, we're going to be honest. I would hope all creators are honest no matter what. But of course, there are contracts that say not necessarily that you can't say anything negative, but you can't just obviously or harshly kind of bash the company. So that really does help brands. So you can't just go out there and say, I just hate them, they're horrible, like it's trash. But you also need to be honest. So if it didn't work for you, you can say, do it all the time, like, hey, this product smelled great, but got on my skin and I broke out. So it didn't work for me. And that's okay. But it's a difference than saying, like, I just hate this brand, they're horrible. Like, that's too far. So that's another reason why it's really good to just have a contract in place for both people, really. Because then also you don't want the brand to bash you. I've seen that as well.
Yeah. And the feud on social media can blow up pretty quickly too.
I'm telling you, I'm like, oh my God, not the tea.
Oh, that's great. And then in terms of all of that sort of stuff, you're kind of saying that there's no standardized contracts just yet. Right. So are you saying the best thing to do is, as soon as you start getting free product, kind of just consult an attorney or something? And then what is the sort of process for that? If you're a content creator and you've maybe got 10,000 followers, you got maybe a few brands hitting you up to send you some free soap or something, do some reviews.
Absolutely. So thank God for Google. There's so many resources. If you're going to go with a commercial, we like to put in Louisville commercial contract where it's just something random on Google, choose an attorney drafted contract. There's so many now, more attorneys, as well as just contract consultants in general, that customize contracts that are templates. So with a template, which I love, is that you can really get in there and personalize it and customize it, and it can grow with you and your brand until you're able to really afford an attorney either in-house or on your team, or even a contract consultant. So I think it's really good to go the attorney drafted template route if you're going to do that. But also, don't be afraid to ask the brand. Sometimes I do that just to see if a brand, if they don't introduce a contract, I say, do you have a contract for this collaboration? Or you're going to present me with a contract? And most of the time, they have more resources. So sometimes it's okay to lean on them. They have more resources to purchase a contract or to talk to an attorney. And then what you can do is reach out to an attorney to help you review it and revise it. I do that as well. Being a contract consultant, I go through it with my clients. We talk about it, we redline it, we draft it, and send it back to the brand. So sometimes it's good to start off with something from the brand and then go from there.
Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Use the agency that you're asking to do the promotion to write the contract, and then you revise.
Right.
That actually leads on to a good question. Do you mostly work, or do you see most of the future and growth in the kind of influencer marketing legal division being representing influencers or representing the agencies?
I love that question for so many reasons. Because as an attorney, if I'm going to be honest with y'all, here's the real legal tea. There's a lot more money in working for agencies and businesses and brands. They just have more money than a lot of creators because most creators, when they get to a certain threshold, they already have a team. So they don't necessarily want to get involved with their contracts. They still should. They still should. But a lot of them already kind of have that like kind of going within the team. They don't have to do too much. They just review it, read it, sign it, and go on. So for me, what I'm trying to do is make it reasonably priced for newer, smaller creatives, and then share as much free information as I can. So I think it's going to be both. I think some attorneys are still going to, of course, they need help in the agencies because I've received contracts from pretty big brands, no name drops, and it was just a horrible contract. It was horrible. It was a commercial contract. They kept the name on it. It was like, come on, we got to do better than this. So I definitely think we need lawyers in both places, but I think it's going to take a certain passionate lawyer to really help smaller creators because it's not going to be about the money. It's just about helping them really. Of course, getting paid. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
no, everybody needs to get paid.
Yeah, it's definitely more of like a educational kind of based thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you see a similar thing in all industries, really.
Yes.
The larger companies do have more disposable income and unfortunately that leads to probably them winning more often. More often than not.
Sad, and then also I think a lot of creators that maybe don't have access to legal help or contract consultants, whatever the case may be, think it's super expensive when sometimes it doesn't have to be. I know some other lawyers and creatives that are able to help people with contracts that don't charge as much as you think when you initially think of like a lawyer, like, oh my goodness, all this money or courts and all that. And it can get expensive, but it doesn't have to be.
Just I don't want to put you on the spot, but if I am an influencer and I'm looking to get a contract made just for maybe just a standard contract to protect me and make sure I get paid, what sort of ballpark pricing should I be looking at, just so that everybody listening knows when they're like getting a good deal or when they're just like getting rinsed?
Absolutely. So it does vary. I've of course looked at other websites. I do have templates right now. They're being customized and updated because I want to make them shorter because I don't like reading long contracts. So I'm like, why am I giving other people to do it? Let's figure that out. So it varies. So a range is going to be broad because it could go higher or lower. I think a safe range is $250 to $850, $250 to $850, somewhere in there. And I know $850 sounds like a lot, but some attorneys, as well as I do this, if it's multiple contracts on a monthly recurring basis, I do have like a membership where I have clients that I kind of have me on retainer, so to say, as their consultant, where I use Voxer. It's an app, voice messaging and text messaging app. So they can kind of have me on more of a recurring on the call kind of basis. When something comes up very quickly, I help them with email drafting. So it really depends on how strict that attorney or that contract consultant is being with what they're reviewing. Just strictly a contract, I still think probably more on that lower end, but definitely it can be tough because sometimes it's the back and forth revisions. Because if I do the initial review, of course, you're going to want to help me if they send back some updates or if you have more questions. You kind of want to have that access to make sure you get the final end of that contract and sign it.
Yep. Okay. So you've really got a few options. You've kind of got the, create a standard contract for me that I can use with all my brands. This is exactly what I do every time.
Yep.
And then you've got kind of like consultation and, adjustments of contracts for maybe more difficult brands that want to work with agencies. And you've got kind of like full management. Is that kind of like the three levels?
That was perfect. Okay. Exactly. That's exactly what I meant to say. Great summary.
No, I'm learning just as much as most of our listeners are probably going to learn.
I'm glad.
Because I need to learn all this stuff too. But no, that's great. And then just to kind of like recap for, influencers and creators that are listening. So the main things they need to look out for, and let me know if I'm missing any. One is just making sure that your contract is for the law in your own country. Mm-hmm. Two, have a contract no matter what, just so that you at least have what deliverables are, when it's due, and how much you're getting paid.
Yep.
And then, were there any other main things that content creators or influencers should do when they're working with brands?
I would say never be afraid to negotiate, even if their initial email says nothing is negotiable. There's been too many times and it sounds crazy, but there's too many times I may get an email from a potential brand collaboration and they say the price is non-negotiable. Myself and or my manager will respond, this is the rate, and they'll say, great, we'll do that. Imagine if I just took for what they said. Or just like with the client story I was telling, imagine he was just like, oh, 5 years, I'm locked in. I have no choice. That's their policy. And then they came back and said, oops, accident. Just kidding. It's not. So don't be afraid to ask questions and negotiate on your own behalf, because it's not the brand's job. It's your job as the creator to tell them your worth, especially if they reach out to you. I'm always like, y'all ask me. So keep that in mind. Like your content mind, your creativity is valuable. Represent yourself every single time you're talking to a brand.
Yep. Okay, that's a really good point, because always ask. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to end up back where you were before asking.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. And then are there any major mistakes or pitfalls that content creators should look out for when working with brands?
Oh, goodness. In perpetuity, let me just throw it out there. In perpetuity or perpetual, it means forever. So you're signing over your rights to whatever piece of content forever. It's too long. We can't price it. They don't want to pay it. That's my concept. So whenever I see it in a contract, I control F and just check, make sure I didn't see it. Perpetual, in perpetuity, all of it. Just ask them to take it out. And I promise you, I've never had a brand say they can't take it out. So to me, that shows they just put that in there to see if anyone's going to actually notice and or read it. And the reason behind that is you want them to have to come back to pay for additional usage. That's really, to me, where the money resides in the industry. Yes, you initially get the payment for you creating the content, but where you get the additional revenue is the recurring payment of them having to pay for usage. So let's say the initial collaboration was just on Instagram. They get to repost your content. You get to post it on your platform, but then they come back later and say, oh, we want to use this in our email marketing. That's an additional rate. Oh, we want to use this on a billboard. That's an additional rate. But if you say in perpetuity or perpetual or worldwide royalty-free usage, they don't have to come back for anything. So definitely look out for those terms within your contract. And again, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask, like, how long is this usage? I read it and I don't quite understand. So that's something else. I think a lot of creators, they just overlook things, or if they don't understand it, they just like, oh, it's fine, I'm just going to sign it. And then they come to me after the fact and I'm like, you already signed it. It's signed, it's delivered, you know? So if you're reading something you don't understand, ask or look it up.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm sure there's so many people like you who have so much content out there addressing some of these major questions and concerns that influencers and creators have anyway. So yeah, definitely do some research. But and what section under the contract would people find it under?
Various. Usually it's under
Every
they
section.
kind of keep it in there. It's interesting. I've seen it in various places, but they usually put it under ownership, and or when they talk about usage rights, licensing. Those are probably, I would say, the top three. So ownership, usage rights, licensing. You'll see that word in there, and sometimes they'll just throw it in there kind of at the end. So there usually is a clause that says, oh, I've talked to like a opposing counsel, I've talked to a lawyer in some way, discuss them the contract, and sometimes they may put it in there. I've seen it there, which doesn't really make sense, but again, we all learn it. But usually definitely check the ownership, and also make sure that you're not signing over your intellectual property or just all types of things I've seen, especially if you're working with an agency or a talent management. Read that contract too that they send you. It's great, they're going to represent you, but read that contract, because I read one. They were like, we're going to get a percentage of any business you do, regardless of brand deals. I wouldn't recommend signing that, because what if they're not helping with that project? If you're doing merch and it's outside the scope of what they're helping with, why would they get percentage? So again, it comes with the reading and the understanding and the asking questions.
Yeah, so that actually is a great point. A lot of influencers and content creators are now getting kind of managers to do this sort of stuff for them. But, what should they be looking out for when they're signing a manager? Because, that's a really good point, that they take a percentage of everything when that manager really doesn't have an impact on every aspect of the business. So is there anything that they should also look out for when they're kind of choosing managers, or at least looking at contracts that their managers are getting them to opt into?
Absolutely. A huge red flag would be if the manager doesn't want to negotiate their contract. One, they probably may not understand it, so that's a red flag. But if they're not willing to negotiate some aspect, because all the management I've reviewed, not as many of those contracts as like brand collaborations, but I've reviewed up to maybe 10 to 15 of those, and they all have something where it says the manager is not required, there's no obligation for them to get a certain amount of opportunities for the creator. However, on the other side, they get the, like I was saying, the percentage of everything the creator is doing. So if you have no obligation to get me work, like of course it says they have to do their due diligence and try to get as many, but there's no required amount. Why would I then be required to give you everything if I'm getting my own opportunities? So definitely look into, it's going to be in that ownership and responsibilities kind of area within the contract, maybe deliverables in the area. You want to make sure that what they're obligated to do measures up to what you are required to do for them.
Okay, and if I was a content creator, would you suggest making a required amount of opportunities in the contract, or just making the percentage or revenue more lax?
Part of me wants to say, I think it would depend on the level of the creator. And that's how I would put it. If I'm already bringing in a lot of opportunities myself without you even being involved, I may have a requirement, because if I'm already bringing in 5 partnerships a month and I want to get to that 10, I'm going to need you to at least bring in 2 just to show me why I need you if I've already been doing it myself. But then on the other hand, if I'm not getting many opportunities yet, I might not know how many would be reasonable because I haven't had those opportunities, if that makes sense. So as a small creator, I would be a little bit more, okay, let's just see how much we can do. And then maybe do a review after 6 months with that manager and say, okay, it looks like you're bringing in about 3. Let's see if we can keep up with that. So don't be, again, it's all about tracking your analytics. And still, again, that's standing up for yourself and knowing when to negotiate and when to advocate for yourself.
Okay, so having like a benchmark and then going off that. Okay, and then, what's your opinion on those managers? Do you think content creators should have them? Do you think they shouldn't? What's your opinion on that?
I think you don't need them, but I think they're extremely helpful. I think it's kind of like when you're building any team, right? So it's like, do I actually need a personal assistant, or like that would just be nice? Do I actually need someone to mow my lawn, or I'm just not trying to do it? Those kind of things. Like when you're building out your team, sit down and think, what are the tasks that I'm doing that I really would love someone else to do? Sometimes you really just need a virtual assistant to handle your emails because you're already getting so many opportunities. You don't need someone out there trying to like put your name on lists and opportunities if you're already doing well. But then again, there are some managers that have a certain level of connection, and I'd say like relationships within the industry that are extremely beneficial that you will not be able to get anywhere else. So it really comes down to, what are your goals in your influencer marketing industry, in your space, in your business? And would this person, knowing all about them, interviewing them, reading the contract and making sure you're on the same page, would they be able to get you where you want to go? Or are you already there and you need to just kind of do what you're doing and cruise through it? So it depends.
Okay.
I'm not against them at all.
No,
but
it's super
get a little crazy, but I'm not against them.
No, I appreciate it, because I also want to ask for people's opinions, not also like what the right or the wrong answer is. It's just like, everybody's got their own opinion. And it's interesting to see the reasoning behind why people should have them, why people shouldn't. And, I think as a content creator, you should hear all angles. You should see the pros to having them and the cons to having them before you make that decision. So all super interesting points. And then bringing this back into you a little bit. So, you've got, 80,000 plus subscribers on YouTube. Your content is amazing. What do you think makes your YouTube channel stand out? And why do you think you stand out in the industry? Because you're by far one of the most, found, influencer marketing attorneys for sure. So what do you think makes your stuff stand out?
Thanks. Not you having to make me brag on myself. No. I would think my honesty and my authenticity. And I know that's such an influencer creator thing to say, but really, I mean, it started off me just picking up my camera, then me walking through law school halls with my camera still, sitting down, talking about being a lawyer, and then talking about the influencer marketing space and realizing it's something that needs to be talked about in a fun, authentic, raw, real way. And I think that's what it is. It's just, I just am myself, and I really enjoy this. And I tell people all the time, when you're doing a job where you would do it for free, like, you found your passion, where your passion and purpose kind of merge together and bridge that perfect gap for you. So I really just enjoy it. And I feel like people can tell I enjoy it. I love the whole content creation process, from the creative direction, from the brainstorming to the shooting to the editing. Like, I love the whole process. And then adding the element of being a lawyer. Like, I've always loved to read and stuff like that. So now I feel like I can make that connection and explain to people a little bit easier than some other attorneys that may have been so far out from the social media space that they can't quite build that connection. So I really just enjoy it. I love creating content, and I think that shows through my content.
Yeah. Okay. And this is more questions towards you being a content creator versus a versus attorney. But do you dive into all your analytics and see what content does well, and do you create more content? How kind of like in detail and depth do you go for your creation of content, like the ideation, the filming, the shot list or whatever? How deep into the details do you go?
It depends. Honestly, I feel like I go through seasons of really diving into my analytics and focusing maybe heavier on one platform than the other. So right now I'm going through focusing on YouTube platform more than Instagram, because I've come to the conclusion that it's hard when you don't have a larger team to really put 100% in all of your platforms. Then of course I want to give my all to my clients. So I always have this interesting balance between looking at analytics. So right now I really have been focusing on my YouTube analytics. I try to look at it at minimum once a month to see what I'm doing, revising, asking my friends around me, whether they're in the creative space or not, to kind of look at my content and say, oh, what do you think if you see this? Get other people's opinions. I think to me that has been the most beneficial. Of course, analytics are important. Of course, you got to look at the data, but I also think getting an outside perspective of your content is super helpful, because I don't know about y'all, but like, I think my content is great. I'm my number one fan. I love it. And I'm so emotionally connected to it that sometimes I can't see when it's like, okay, I probably shouldn't have did that, or maybe I should add this instead. So definitely getting outside opinion has helped me as well.
Got it. And then is that outside opinion, is that fans, or is that close fans, family members, friends? What's the kind of like the vetting process before your content goes out?
Before it goes out, me versus me. No, my manager helps me quite a bit with content. She started off more as like an assistant, and I kind of like created her into a manager position, which is great. She's phenomenal at what she does. But really it's just I brainstorm my ideas, and I have like some local creatives that I really love and I value their opinion, and I may bounce ideas off of them. And then once I have my set list, I just input it in my calendar and figure and go from there.
Nice. Yeah, because it's impressive you coming from the content creator side as well as the legal side, and kind of having an interesting marriage between those two things.
Absolutely.
In terms of like, do you ever do brand deals? Like, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
And
I do. Mostly on Instagram.
Okay.
But now I'm focusing more on YouTube now. So I do intend on incorporating it a little bit more on my YouTube channel. But I feel like my YouTube channel is like my baby. So I'm a little bit more picky on over there. But I do brand deals, of course. I feel like most creatives,
brands don't shy away.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always think that I'm like, maybe I haven't been getting much because of that. But I think most of the brands that I work with, they're pretty receptive of what I say. I don't try to throw the attorney card out there. I just respond like anybody else, do the content like anybody else. And a lot of times what I'm doing is I'm testing out different things to see how they work. Sometimes they don't. And then I know not to do that with my clients. So I kind of treat myself as like a guinea pig. So I may ask for a really large rate just to see if it works, and kind of see where that brand is thinking in different brand brackets when it comes to local businesses, as far as like household name brands. So I kind of have fun with that and like test the waters with that, and kind of build analytics for my clients, really. But I enjoy it as well, especially when I get to work with a brand that I just already love.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and it's great to practice what you preach. So it's probably good to stay fresh on that and see what the agencies are trying to sneak into those contracts. So you can tell your clients.
I think that's what sets me aside from other attorneys, is that yes, you can do the research, yes, you can review and read and talk to clients, but there's nothing like being a client. Like I'm the client that I'm also helping. So it really helps me like stay in the know and stay on top of everything. And like I said, just test out different negotiation strategies and kind of see where brands are right now.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think it's important. And, I know we were chatting a little bit before this, and you were going to do a masterclass, or you were going to kind of go through and teach some people how to navigate these waters, because, the content creators, the last thing they're thinking about is legal. But they should be thinking about it. And, you're going to start doing maybe a few classes and that sort of stuff. Tell me how you sort of obviously started in content creation on YouTube and Instagram and was just creating videos. And then it sounds like you were like getting clients, and now you're kind of looking at the next level, which is kind of teaching to the masses, which is, you work one-on-one, then you work one-to-many. So what was the sort of point where you were like, okay, let's start doing these masterclasses, and, what goes into that?
Yeah. So even kind of going back to the question about how I create my content, I do get a lot of feedback from my audience, like on Instagram, even on YouTube. I have a very engaged audience. I'm in the DMs laughing like we're family members. It's amazing. I love it. So I get a lot of feedback from them. And I started to notice that I've been getting a ton of questions about influencer contracts more detailed questions, even if it's just something that keeps recurring in different people with different circumstances. It hit me. It would be much easier for me in the capacity that I have to just address people all at once rather than going in individually. Because I send voice messages in my direct message. I want to make sure that I'm actually providing value and actually helping someone. But I think the best way to do this is now to kind of expand on that, do masterclasses. I've done an in-person workshop. I plan on doing more of that in my local state and things like that. Just really kind of speaking to more people at once with the main topics that I keep seeing over and over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, masterclasses and courses and live webinars are the best way to do that because, I think the one thing that we're seeing with a lot of creators and a lot of brands is the connection between, or the relationship between the brand and the customer, or the brand and the influencer is getting much, much closer.
Yes.
So, the Q&A between those two, the negotiation that happens and all that sort of stuff, it's not as kind of like bulldozer-ish anymore, where it was just kind of like, you do it or the brand moves on sort of thing. Creators are definitely having much more, I suppose, leverage in those negotiations.
Absolutely. Because I mean, if I was a business, which I am, but if I was selling some type of product, of course, I would love to actually say to my ideal client, hello, I'm so-and-so. Here's my personality. Here's why you should buy from my business. Here's my story. Purchase from me. There's nothing like that direct conversation, which is why influencer marketing is growing so fast. It's because there's nothing like it. There's no direct communication, just like you were saying, like an influencer talking to their audience, saying, I love this. Y'all see me wear this all the time. Swipe up. It's so quick and easy. It's like you purchase before you even know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
I'm like, did I purchase something again? Influencer being influenced, it happens all the time. I'm influenced all the time.
Yeah, well, it's becoming just as important as paid advertising.
Yes.
It's getting to the point where it's probably like, it is time consuming, but it's definitely very effective and can be much more effective in some ways than paid advertising and running ads, especially with all these like iOS updates and all these other crazy things, which I'm sure you're hearing a lot about, and all the legalities that go into tracking and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
But we're going to start wrapping it up. But one last question I did want to ask was, is there any tips that you have for content creators who are trying to get brand deals? Like, how do they best position themselves? How do they best sort of set themselves up to be attractive to brands to work with? Any tips on that if content creators are trying to find brand deals?
Absolutely. First, make sure you're creating content that a brand wants to work with. A lot of times I think the first thing a creator thinks when they want to make money on the platform is how to make money. How do I get there? How to get in front of the brand? Are you creating content that a brand would even want to be a part of? So make sure that the content you're creating is great quality. And it doesn't have to be on this fancy camera. It just needs to be quality. And quality has different levels. And also consistency. Consistency to me doesn't mean posting every day. I can't post every single day. If you can, that's great. Try it. But what is consistent to you should be whatever you can maintain for a long amount of time. Like if you can maintain 3 times a week, stick to it and write it out. Also, don't be afraid to use influencer marketing platforms. I feel like some people have a negative connotation. Just go into it knowing you're not going to make as much money on those platforms as you can with a direct brand contact. That's just what it is. That's just how it works. But if you're new, get your foot wet with negotiating on those platforms, with understanding the terminology within the influencer marketing space. So then once you do get that brand deal opportunity, you're already up to date. And also it gives you really good practice. So if you work with a brand and it's not that much money, but you're now showing other brands that, hey, here's a sponsored post. This is a brand that trusts me. Y'all should trust me as well. So there's lots of different elements when it comes to kind of taking smaller deals as you ease into influencer marketing and brand deals. So don't be afraid to take a little less in the beginning just so you can get your feet wet.
Got it. Okay. And then are there any recommendations on which are the best influencer marketing platforms? Because there seem to be influencer marketing marketplaces popping up almost daily.
Literally everywhere. There's so many. So just off the top of my head, I've used Aspire IQ, obviously, Whaler, Collectively. That's all I can think of at the top of my head. Popular Pays. It's top 5. So I don't know if they're like the top 5, but there are 5 off the top of my head. There's
Got
several
it.
others that I've used and that I know other creators use, but um,
And
this is
they're
where.
kind of like the marketplaces where influencers and brands collide, isn't it?
Exactly. So they kind of work as like the third party to kind of help get everybody in connection. So you create a profile on the platform. Some of them you have to request to be on the platform. Some of you don't. Some of them you don't. You get on the platform, create your profile, connect your social media platforms, and then you can see the marketplace, like you were saying. Oh, also Fohr is another one. FOHR. You see the marketplace. You can scroll on there and see what are the available campaigns. Do they match with your aesthetic, your brand identity? Do they match with your following count? Some of them have requirements for that. And just apply and submit your information. And then once you're on those platforms, what I noticed is if there's a brand that really, really likes you, I may get directly contacted because they saw me on that platform. Sometimes it's easier to get in front of the brand on those platforms versus on social media where it's billions of people on there. So that also is kind of like insider because they can like your page on most of the platforms and then you kind of build that connection there.
I'm sure that leads to other opportunities too. Once you sort of get in with
Absolutely.
one, I'm sure
Yep.
it's there's lots of opportunities hidden behind those as well. But
Exactly.
yeah, but no, it's interesting how they've done that. Like, I'm not sure if you ever were in the affiliate marketing world, but it's kind of very
Mm-hmm.
similar to when they had the affiliate marketing marketplaces where the brands would list their deals and then the creators would apply. Whereas now it's kind of like almost the other way around. It's kind of
Exactly.
like all the creators are listed and then the brands apply to the creators.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, interesting how it's flipped.
Exactly. Because they see the
Yeah,
benefit. They're like, wait, we need you. Exactly. It couldn't be influencer marketing without influencers.
yeah. So I suppose that's what really differentiates affiliate marketing versus influencer marketing. You know,
Yeah.
the person who's
Exactly.
initiating it.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Now there are some
Yeah.
influencers that do reach out to a lot of brands and cold pitch and all that. That I just personally don't. Nothing against
Mm-hmm.
it. I think a lot of times it feels more organic. One for me and for my audience, if it's like I've already been using the products, I've already talked
Mm-hmm.
about the product in some capacity, or when the brand reaches out to me, I have a lot more leverage with negotiating. So I just personally like that. But I'm definitely not against cold pitching because it's hard to get in
Mm-hmm.
front of the brands.
Yeah.
It does take time. It can be a long process, especially if you go kind of the more non-traditional, not cold pitching route.
Mm. And when you're saying cold pitching, is that just influencers sending emails to the brands or DMing them? What's yeah?
Exactly. Combination. So some people they will go on LinkedIn and find like the brand's influencer marketing manager and things like that. There's so many different ways to do it. But I think once you tag a brand, especially in the stories, kind of little pro tip, once you tag the brand so often, not only are you building in your Instagram stories, you can see how many times they've been mentioned on your story. You can use that as leverage when you reach out to them. So then it's not as cold of a pitch. 9 times out of 10, the brand will like the story. They will comment on the story, say thank you. And it might not be the person that is actually going to get you that partnership. A lot of times, just like an intern or something. But don't be afraid to use that after you've tagged them about 10, 20 times. Say, thank you again for liking my post. I would love to get in connection with whoever's over your influencer marketing. They send you the email. Now it's not as cold of a pitch because you've already kind of put your face in front of someone at that company.
Wow. Yeah. Great tip there.
The T.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's it. Nice. All right, and then on that note, let's go into where people can find out more about you, what you're up to right now, anything you've got coming up, or anything like. Now's your time to shine. Go for it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all for having me. You can find me on YouTube at Kameron Monet. It's Kameron with a K, as well as Instagram with at Kameron Monet. If you want to, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I feel like don't nobody really be on there, but I am an attorney, so I am on LinkedIn. And something coming up. I have a masterclass coming up. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but don't worry, I'll have several other masterclasses coming soon. This is going to be focused on influencer marketing contracts. I'm going to go through an actual contract, walk through it. It's going to be an open Q&A. I've done this. Actually, this is the second time I'm doing it, so I'm excited to kind of keep it going periodically throughout the year. So definitely make sure you guys follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get more about that. If you'd like to work with me in influencer marketing contract capacity, I do offer several different packages. You can find me at CameronMonet.com. Don't be afraid to shoot me an email or purchase a clarity call, and we can kiki, chit chat, get all the tea on the phone, so you can decide if I'm somebody you want to work with. Because I want to make sure it's not only beneficial for me, but also for you, and that we mesh together. So don't be afraid to slide in my DMs either. Okay, I'm not scary. I'm friendly.
No, I definitely think they know you're friendly after this. But
Good.
I'll chuck in all of the links and everything so all you guys can find that super easily. And yeah, definitely suggest checking out that masterclass. I might even attend actually.
Yeah, you should. I'm gonna be spilling all the tea. I'm not holding back.
Nice. Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely interested. But Cameron, thank you so much for all your time. It's been amazing. You've shared so much value. I think everybody listening is in a much better place, whether it's from the brand side or the content creator side. Either way, so many great little nuggets in there. So really appreciate all your time, all your knowledge, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Hey guys, we put a bunch of effort into making great content for this YouTube channel, so please hit subscribe, leave us a comment, hit like, and tell a few friends about it.